All right, world. So today we're going to talk about how society is trying to attach pedophilia to the LGBTQ community and how that should not be done because that's complete nonsense. It's inaccurate. Um, I'm going to, be looking over to my right a bit because I'm going to be referencing off of my laptop because I pulled up a blog, and I'm also referencing to an actual like conviction case that occurred about, I want to say, at least a good 20 plus years ago. So I will put the link in my description, so if you guys want to refer to it, because I'm just going to give you guys a gist. I'm not going to give the full like explanation, but me personally, I feel like what good is your opinion if you can't at least back it up with some facts? You know what I'm saying? So pretty much I want to talk about how from the beginning of time, they've been trying to, well, when I say they, I mean like society has been trying to attach pedophilia to the LGBTQ community. In this case, it's referred to as the San Antonio Four. And the gist of it is these four women, I'll give you their names: Elizabeth Ramirez, Christy Mayhew, Cassandra Rivera, and Anna Vasquez. They were convicted in the late 90s of gang raping two little girls who were the nieces of Elizabeth Ramirez. And these girls, the two girls in the documentary, because that's how I found out about it, the documentary on Netflix, the two girls were allegedly gang raped by the four women that I just listed. And it was said that these four women had recently came out as lesbians, and the prosecutors used their sexuality as a motive. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but jury selection is very, biased. Prosecutors as well as defenders, they go seeking, people that they can add to the jury using voir dire that, that pretty much can back the perspective that they're trying to give off. So say, for instance, the prosecutors were using their sexuality as a motive. What they did was, went out and found jury that were pretty much anti-homosexuality, which, I mean, you don't have to look far. It was said that, long story short, in the documentary, as well as what helped exonerate these women, were one of the nieces came out and said that as when she was a child and she made her statement saying that she was raped by these four women, she said that she had lied, that she was pushed up to do it, coerced to do it by her dad, which in this, in the story and in the documentary, it said that the dad, even though he was in a relationship with the two young girls' mother, he was attracted to the sister, which is Elizabeth Ramirez. He made numerous, like passes at her and stuff, and she turned him down. And after finding out that Elizabeth was in a relationship with Anna, he shortly after, convinced his daughters to, put in a case against Elizabeth, saying like, hey, let's say that they raped you. And so that's what started the whole thing. And me personally, I feel like, the guy got, jealous, butthurt, because the woman that he was seeking to, mess with, despite the fact that that was his children's sister, he was turned down, and then he was turned down by a woman who was in a relationship with the woman. And they later were exonerated because, they were medically, or they had medical experts who supported that, there's no way these women could have, done it or whatever. And also with the niece stepping forward and finally, telling the truth that she was never raped by these women, later resulted in these women being freed from prison almost 15 years later. The whole point of me bringing that up is because it's been something that society uses to stigmatize the LGBTQ community. And even in the blog that I have found, it even says, and it was done recently, July 12, 2018, by John Paul Bramer. It's called Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Pedosexual, and then it's crossed out. But he said, just give you a brief piece of it. The LGBTQ plus community has long been maliciously associated with pedophiles by people who wish to further stigmatize us. Internet trolls are aware of this violent tradition and are taking advantage of spreading propaganda that, on first glance, resembles an embrace of pedophiles by LGBTQ plus people. It's an effective tactic if we accept the false premise that there is a link between sexual predators and queer people, but there isn't, and it's time we stop meeting the propaganda on the trolls' terms. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen it recently, but I have seen it, especially on Facebook, where there's all these different, like videos and stuff, pictures, everything being shared where I guess like people who are considered pedophiles are attaching themselves to the LGBTQ community. And there's even people who's like pushing it as a thing. And I am a part of the community, and I'm here to tell you from my perspective, I can't, I'm not the LGBTQ representative, but I can surely say that we don't, I don't condone or support, pedophilia. That's not a part of the LGBTQ community. Me personally, when it comes down to your sexuality, it's between consenting individuals amongst their peer group. It's if you're children, it's children to children. You know what I'm saying? If you're adults, it's between adults. There is no crossing between adults and children. I mean, if anything, I don't agree with the lifestyle either, especially because growing up, now I've never been raped or molested or anything of the sort, but I've had grown men make passes at me as far as I can remember back as young as 12 years old, or 10 years old. And I remember numerous of times where I wasn't even far from my mom, and she would have to step in and say like, hey, this is a minor, like, what are you doing? And she'll threaten to call the cops, and sometimes she's even called because they would be, so aggressive. And a lot of times these weren't homosexual men. They weren't homosexual women. These were heterosexual men trying to make passes onto me. You know what I'm saying? There's even an instance where this girl I grew up with started to physically develop early. She had, large breasts and full, buttocks by the age of 9 years old. My mom seen, men trying to talk to her and stuff, and my mom will step in and tell them like, hey, this is a child. And their response is, well, she doesn't look like one. You know what I'm saying? And these weren't homosexual men or women. These were heterosexual men, And so I feel like this whole trying to push pedophilia onto the LGBTQ community is just another tactic of, like you said, it's just another way to further stigmatize us. People trying to go backwards and eliminate the rights that were given to the LGBTQ community. And I've even myself experienced, older men through my adult life make passes on kids. You know what I'm saying? Especially with that whole child, the child trafficking that has been, that's prevalent right now. I had to interfere with that where, going to a mall, there's a grown man recording kids with his camera as they come in. And two of the girls that he did it to were, close to me. I said something to him. I went and, told the employees that was in the mall. They went and got the security. Cops were involved. Come to find out that, that has been an issue in that place before by that man before. And so for people to think that the LGBTQ are in support of pedophilia, it's false. It's pretty much, that's what it boils down to. It's false, because me personally, I don't agree with the lifestyle. Now, I would say that I respect pedophiles as humans. You know what I'm saying? The same thing with rapists, the same thing with murderers, the same thing with adulterers, fornicators, and the whole nine. But yet, I don't feel that we should go, harass them, beat on them, and, like, you should still respect them as people, because if you think about it, no one, says they wake up and say, hey, I want to embrace a lifestyle that so many people are against, and I'm going to get so much negative backlash for it. No one wakes up and say, hey, I want to be a homosexual, even though they know that majority of the population is against it. You know what I'm saying? No one wants that hassle. So you should at least respect people for being humans. There was a TED Talk that was going around on social media, and people misconstrued it and tried to make it seem as if TED Talk and his show, his platform, was in support of pedophilia, just because it was speaking about respecting pedophiles. And that is also not true. He's just simply stating that you should respect them as people, because at the end of the day, no one necessarily chooses a lifestyle that's going to cause, so much backlash, especially negative backlash. No one embraces, like I said, no one wakes up and say, hey, I want to be a pedophile today and piss off a bunch of people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you should at least respect them. Now, it's a difference when they're trying to mess with, your loved ones, or, even if you don't know the person. It's a difference between that. But to just go around harassing people, no. Because I would say, from, my own perspective, is that I do believe that this whole ordeal with the pedophile is, it's propaganda to further stigmatize us, and to put the LGBTQ community in a negative light. Because through my own experience, people that were supposedly my friends, or people that, were my acquaintances or whatever, they say that they were in support of, my choices and me being with my wife. But then we saw, their actions show otherwise. Where just recently, I ended a friendship with this guy for over 6 years, because even though he has a child, he's engaged to someone, supposedly, he knows and he's aware that I'm married, he still consistently was in my inbox, and will kind of, give conversation that kind of seemed like it was as if I was single. You know what I'm saying? Like, the conversation is just not the type of conversation that you would, give a married woman, especially your friend who you respects their relationship. And I respectfully told him, like, I want to end the friendship, because honestly, I don't see you as a friend, because you don't respect my relationship with my wife. Is this when me and my wife first started dating, before we even got married, we told this guy, we said, hey, we agreed to tell him that we were dating. And so we went and told him, like, hey, we're now dating, blah, 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 because we were all like best friends, good friends and everything. And so in his face, he was like stuck, he was stuck. And his first response was, I thought I was going to get with one of y'all. And, back then we was just like, okay, whatever. And we just let it go. But then to see over the years that he, like, every now and then he pop up in my inbox, and, the conversation would just, it's just not the type of conversation that I expect from a friend who respects my relationship with my wife. And that's when I told him, you know what? I want no parts. I don't want a friendship like that, because at the end of the day, I feel like you're waiting on my, on the downfall of my relationship so you can scoop in, because at the end of the day, you don't necessarily recognize our marriage as a marriage, because it's between two women instead of a man and a woman. Dealt with the same thing, even in the military, where there's the double standard where, so in the military, there's rules about how the barracks rooms works. Male and females, opposite sex weren't allowed into each other's room. Same sex were allowed in each other's room, but they pretty much had to be out of the room if they did not live there, pretty much between the quiet hours. So it's 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And the same, NCOs that I had, and, the same people, they would do the same stuff I do. So I'm in my wife's room, we're playing video games, watching a movie, whatever it is. And they would go to our higher-ups, our staff NCO, our commanding officer. And for me at the time, my commanding officer was a chief warrant officer, I believe 3. And they would, tell on me for being in my wife's room, and even sometimes after hours. And then, but these are the same, NCOs, corporals and sergeants, who would not only be in their same sex, rooms that they did not live in, after hours, but they would also be in the opposite sex room. And then after, that whole in between that 10 to 6 a.m. period. And a lot of times these were people who, it was obvious, they wanted relations with my wife, or they wanted relations with me, but they were jealous of what we had. So they did everything in their power to, snitch us out. And we were constantly threatened with paperwork. And in the military, you accumulate a good amount of paperwork at some point, that's grounds to be processed out, to be kicked out. And these people were really willing to, ruin people's lives, careers, or whatever, just because of the fact that they did not like that you got 2 females together. You know what I'm saying? And these were people that, claimed to be cool with me or claimed to be cool with my wife, but at the same time was, planning for our downfall. And it's just like, thinking back on it now, it's just like, we've endured so much. Because, we've even, got to the point where it's like, the only way we'll get peace is if we get married. But I don't know if you're familiar, but for the longest, homosexuality was not permitted in the military until, I want to say, between 2011 and 12, where the Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal came about. But before then, even when you had states like California, New York, and I think it was like 1 or 2 other states, it wasn't even that many, it was like maybe 3, 4 at the most, that had legalized same-sex marriage, it wasn't it wasn't recognized in the military. So we weren't allowed to get married, even though we were probably, in states that were, or not in states, but we were like surrounded by people who were allowed to get married. And then there was even that point where, okay, Don't Ask, Don't Tell came about. So now you can openly, be homosexual. You can tell people without having to fear being kicked out of the service. So now we're at that point, but then they're allowing people to get married. But then there was a point where we weren't, same-sex marriages wasn't receiving the same benefits as heterosexual marriages. So for the longest, it just seemed like we were defeated the whole time. You know what I'm saying? And it's a little better now, but then you have transgenders going through the same process, or the same process, the same scrutiny, the same hate that regular bisexual, homosexuals were dealing with. And it's just, it's not right. You know what I'm saying? It's not right, because people don't like people because they're different, or they live their life differently than someone else. And the way I see it is just like, me personally, what you do in your bed with your body is your business. I could care less what you do with your body, your bed. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that same respect should be given unto me. Like, what I do in the privacy of my home with my body should not upset anyone else, because it's my body. I'm not doing anything to you, I'm not hurting you. It's not your body. If you don't want to be a part of, the homosexual community, the LGBTQ community, don't do it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's you. But yeah, and then you even have, people that call themselves Christians, and and they use the Bible to attack people with, different lifestyles, different views, especially homosexuals. And they'll try to, hit you with the, well, God put Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, or, it's just like, come on, seriously? I mean, the Bible speaks on other things, and then, but yeah, they use it and say like it's supposed to be between man and woman, and then they also use, the whole process of procreation. Man and man cannot have kids, woman and women cannot have kids, and it's like, in this day and age, who has sex for kids nowadays? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, even with heterosexual people, who's having, like, no one really has sex for kids. And what gets me is like these same Christians, and I say Christian because I myself is a Christian, regardless of the, the lifestyle that I choose, I still identify as a Christian. I read my Bible because at the end of the day, I believe the word speaks for itself, that God loves all. He died for all sins. He didn't just die for, thieves and murderers. He died for homosexuals, adulterers, liars, and the whole nine. Because it's like, me personally, I'm not a fan of adulterers. That lifestyle is just, I'm against it. The same thing with fornicators. Me personally, I was raised to save yourself, for marriage, for the one person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And that's pretty much what I did. You know what I'm saying? But you don't see me out here attacking people who that I know for a fact has committed adultery. Just like you don't see me out here attacking people who I know for a fact is just out here having sex all free and, free and openly. Because at the end of the day, like the Bible says, when Jesus returns for us, I'm not going to stand before the Heavenly Father for your sins, just like you're not going to stand before him for mine. So if we're not going to stand before the Heavenly Father for each other's sins, why should I pass judgment on you for the things you do and vice versa? You should love me for me because I'm a person. And that's what the Bible promotes. Loving your neighbor. Your neighbor is that pedophile, is that homosexual, it's that adulterer, is that thief, is that rapist, that killer. You know what I'm saying? People want to pick and choose what parts of the Bible they want to, live by, and they want to pick and choose what parts of the Bible they can use to throw at people to try to get people to live like how they live. But it's like, none of us are perfect. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, we're all sinners. We all done something that should not have been done, and we're going to be held accountable for it at some point. And pretty much to, just to sum it all up is show love, don't pass judgment on the next person, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. Because me personally, like I said, I don't agree with the pedophilia or the pedophile lifestyle. I don't. And I would do everything in my power to not only protect my loved ones from, encountering that whole ordeal, but I would also do the same thing with others. But people need to stop putting a bubble on it. Stop trying to put pedophilia, attach it to the LGBTQ communities. Like I said, most of these people who are searching for love through their younger counterparts are heterosexual. You know what I'm saying? You can pull up statistics. Like I said, I will attach the links in my description so that way you can see for yourself, because nothing that I say cannot be backed up, even though it is my opinion. But I don't want everything to be, come from a subjective standpoint. So instead of passing judgment, love people, show love. Protect your own by all means necessary, because there are some predators out here who are intending to hurt, people, like not just the young and the innocent, but just people in general. So do, by all means, protect yours, but at the same time, don't sit here prejudging people and trying to put people in this, in this boat because they're different from you. Because to be honest, it does no good but cause more chaos. So peace.